In a world where Dalit opportunities are often dictated by social status and gender, Dalit women stand at the intersection of multiple layers of discrimination. Despite these challenges, they exhibit extraordinary resilience and determination to break these barriers and pursue education as a pathway to empowerment. Their unwavering determination serves as a beacon of hope, challenging entrenched inequalities and advocating for a future where every woman, regardless of caste or gender, can have equal access to opportunities for empowerment and fulfillment. In this edition of the Roundtable, organized by the Nickel and Dimes Gender and Society Cluster, we'll be discussing the role of education as a beacon for Dalit women's liberation. My first question to all of you is, what role can the education system play in addressing deep-rooted caste-based prejudices and promoting social inclusion? Suniti, would you like to go?
Yeah, so I think education is as strong a weapon as any armed like any arms or something like that is because I think we all must have heard the quote that a pen is as mighty as the sword. So basically, when we talk about education, education empowers us in the way it creates awareness. It tells us the process, it tells us what options we have, and how can we proceed in a situation in the most logical way. That is the way education would empower any person. Now, when we talk specifically about deep-rooted caste-related inequalities in our society, I think it one of the biggest example of Dalits coming out and getting a representation was Dr. B.R. Ambedkar. He was the father of Indian Constitution. So we were very well able to inculcate the idea of equality in papers in our constitution. Of course, like there's like safeguards that are mentioned in the constitution itself, and we have quite an like the Prevention of Atrocities Act, which was implemented in 1989, which came up for the protection of Dalits or other castes, basically. Uh, but when the community is educated, when they know that something like that exists, and you how that would be applied, how can you approach the law to get your rights, to get what the government or the constitution has promised them or safeguards them, that is when you sort of you are actually safe and you actually get those opportunities. And I think education is definitely one of the foremost and important way that one can get that opportunity. If you are not capable of reading and writing, you probably would never be able to read or communicate in a way uh, to other people about how or what all is available to you, who all can you approach, like institutional measures and everything. Neither would you have the confidence to actually question the wrongs that are present in the bureaucracy in the system. So I think that way education does not just empowers you in the realm of the awareness. It empowers you politically, socially. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Suniti. I think just adding a little bit to that, methods to promote social inclusion. I feel like one way education could incorporate that could be, through an inclusive curriculum in itself. Having diverse perspectives and histories and experiences reflected in the sort of curriculum that we're teaching the children, I think that is bound to help because representation of individuals from lower caste backgrounds can challenge ingrained perspectives. Would either of you like to add to, the methods we can use to promote social inclusion, like how the education system can help with that? Yes, Anushka and Hedi. Anushka, you can go first.
Sampada, I was reading one of the articles wherein it talked about critical Dalit pedagogy, wherein they were like the curriculum should be centric to the experiences and causes of Dalit oppression, and how the curriculum should be inclusive of the experiences Dalits face. And also, the education system should be such that they feel inclusive within the academic system. And also, I feel education is very important for Dalit women, especially because they are doubly oppressed, and it allows them to, feel empowered. And secondly, they feel as if they are a part of this of the mainstream society. And thirdly, it if a person is educated, a Dalit person is educated, be it a man or a woman, they would kind of ensure that this discrimination doesn't radiate into future generations. So that is why I think education is extremely important.
Thank you, Anushka. Haley, would you like to add something to that?
Yeah, to sort of build on to what all of you said, firstly, you need to be educated to sort of identify that you're facing discrimination in the first place, let alone combat it. Additionally, I think educational institutions sort of provide an open platform for dialogue, not only between a teacher and a learner, but within a group of learners as well, right? So, this ability to sort of converse helps understand the diverse backgrounds where people are coming from, and it sort of fosters a culture of mutual understanding and respect, which would probably extend to any existing prejudices, falling through.
Thank you, Haley. I think just sort of summing up what all of you have said, I think education can definitely serve as a very powerful tool when it comes to challenging caste-based prejudices. But I think it's also very important to keep in mind that addressing these deep-rooted issues, like caste discrimination, requires sustained effort and commitment from a lot of other stakeholders, including policymakers, different communities, educators, and civil society organizations, and so on. Moving on to the next segment of our discussion. How can education empower Dalit women to challenge discrimination and advocate for their rights? Yes, Haley.
Um, so I think education helps them gain knowledge and earn a living for themselves. So when a Dalit woman actually starts earning, she'd be able to break free from that circle of poverty and unemployment, and not just have a better life for herself, but as Anushka said, for the future generations as well. Not only that, gaining education would also help her build a sense of self confidence and self respect. This would give them a voice to speak up for their rights and also call out any discrimination that they face in any aspect of their lives. Also, I think gaining education in a way through which Dalit women can actually reach the policy formulating positions, they can partake in deliberations and sort of bring into effect real tangible changes for their community. So yeah.
Thank you, Haley. Sunidhi, would you like to go?
Yeah, so I think I am sorry, can you repeat the question? I just lost. I had a thought in mind.
No, sure. So the question is, how can education empower Dalit women to challenge discrimination and advocate for their rights?
Yeah, sorry. So I had read about this one lady that was in 19, I think in the British India, basically. Uh, this lady by the name of Muktabai Salve, uh, who at the age of 14 sort of questioned the fact that why couldn't she, like other people in the village, go to the school like all her other friends or like other children around her, go to the school and get the sort of education that they were getting, so that could basically think or to basically dream of further of being empowered. Because when we talk about education, it is not just about being represented. There's like more to it. Basically, it's not just about Dalits. It's basically education itself sort of helps you survive, thrive on your own. You have your own identity, and we all know that as a woman, you already have to go through those stages of proving yourself as a woman. So this is basically what we talk about, the intersectionality. When you are a woman and you are a Dalit, you are way more below. So when you are educated and you like sort of, question, it helps you question what all is happening around you. And uh, that really helps you to also sort of structure your thoughts, make a future for yourself. So all of this is like education helps in all of that, and so it is very important. But like if you are learn if someone's being taught something from like a very early on age, if you are being you've been going to school from like when you're 4 years old, so you sort of implicate that it's a routine. Like for us, going to school is a or coming to college or studying or learning something is a part of like it's not a want, it's a need basically. So for Dalit women also, if the change starts and if one woman is being, if she fights with that struggle of being educated, I think right uh, with time it will become a norm for them. It won't be a struggle for them. It will also like it is being realized that uh, education is a basic right, and so you even women, Dalit women, have to be given that. It's not like, you're giving, it's a privilege for them. It's a basic need for them, basically.
Thank you, Sunidhi. I think one interesting thing I picked up from your what you spoke about. I think I'd just like to sort of add to that. I think education is very important when it comes to basic like self-confidence and self-esteem building. Um, I think if you want to speak up against discrimination and asserting your own rights, I feel like being educated and liberated is the right way to go about it. Till the time you don't know what is going wrong, you can't like challenge the norms around you or the norms that perpetuate discrimination, particularly against Dalit women. Bhumika, would you like to add something to this?
Yeah, I think you all have summed it perfectly. That first of all, education helps you become economically independent, and it also, makes you aware about your rights, constitutional rights, and how you can challenge the system. But I think education also helps in, helps you connect with people who are going through similar experiences. It helps you network, and it gives you a collective platform, because now that collective voice better is better heard. So I think it gives you a platform where you can all come together who have similar experiences, and you can raise your voice. So, and seeing more women, I think Sunidhi already said that, seeing Dalit women get into education and access their education, it actually helps encourage other women to fight for their rights, and it helps challenge the status quo, I think. Yeah.
Thank you, Bhumika. I think education interventions in general, when it comes to addressing this issue, need to be very sensitive to the specific needs of Dalit women, and based off of their experiences. And if you're implementing these policies, it needs to be in collaboration with a lot of stakeholders, so that we can get diverse perspectives on what can cater best to the needs of these women. Moving on to the next segment of our discussion. What do you think are the main challenges faced by Dalit girls and women in accessing quality education in our society? Yes, Anushka.
Firstly, I feel like they have this absence of positive role models in their life, which come from similar backgrounds, due to which, they lack this uh, aspirational goals of building a career and pursuing education. And secondly, if you are a Dalit woman, if you're a rural Dalit woman, then education is, I think, not a priority for them, but managing the household and doing menial jobs so as to earn an extra income, it is a priority for them. And thirdly, marriage and lack of familial support to pursue their education is also a very big obstruction in their path to pursue education or build a career.
Thank you, Anushka. Sunidhi, would you like to add something to that?
Yeah, so like how Anushka mentioned that you know especially in rural areas, Dalit women, education is not the top priority, and it's more about managing the household. But even if there is a will, there's somewhere a person who is willing to do it, or if there's someone as who would want to, whose family is supportive enough, still I think there's a lack of infrastructure in the villages. So there's this article I was reading on how initially and even today there will be places where Dalits are always sort of placed outside the village. They are not really allowed to enter the village, and even if they are not allowed to go to the major public buildings in the village where children of the upper caste people study or visit or anything. So I think that infrastructure is really dangerous for Dalits in a whole to sort of travel from outskirts of the village to the main part of the village, crossing forests and everything. That part, and adding to that, if it's a woman, there's always a chance of there's always a threat on the security of the women or the safety and everything. So it's not even about if people if the family or the women, it's like the girl or the woman is itself willing to go. It's also about even if they are willing to, they're like too much of infrastructural and social obstacles in between, which really makes it difficult for them to access even the basic so even basics of education. And to tackle that, also is reading that there were alternative ways that were put out. Basically, different ways of schooling were put out, and even there's a uh, there's a thing on trial that the upper caste people and the Dalit people would not study together, in the same school. It wasn't about equality at that time. It was more about getting them at that level so that they could fight equality. Like we discussed that, education empowers a person to really fight for themselves. So, but I think it also, and this was this was a trial since Britishers' time, but it did not work out because we again rolled out to the same thing that it is not about you know, uh, getting it's basically a power dynamic. Any person who's in a dominant position doesn't want that a person they can, order around her, who is submissive to them would get that sort of a power. So it wasn't even about, being of the different caste, but it was about that superiority complex that people from the upper class had. So even if they weren't in their vicinity studying, if they're having an alternative way to study, the question was only this, that they do not have the right to study. They do not have the right to live up to the standards to which the upper class people are living, because then there would be no difference, there would be no power dynamics between the two. That would in all negate that sort of power that is given to the upper class according to the people themselves, according to the society.
Thank you, Sunidhi. I think that summed up very well. Bhumika, would you like to add something to that?
Actually, I was going to speak on the same point, but Suniti said it really well. So I think, caste system is still so prevalent in Indian society. And we know that because of it, Dalits mostly occupy the lowest rungs of the society. So now there's social stigma and discrimination when it comes to education also. And this prevents them from attending schools, and they face harassment and segregation from upper caste students and teachers. So this also brings to mind there was this case in Rajasthan last year in I think September uh where an upper class teacher beat a Dalit student because he drank water from his pot, and that it resulted in his death. So I think this stigma is still there, and we have to fight. We have to bring about institutional changes and really fight the mindset of teachers who are responsible for instilling these values in students. So that is a major hurdle. And I think secondly, I think Sampada, you mentioned about intersectionality. So there's this intersectionality of being a women facing the patriarchy, and then on top of it there is poverty and economic hardship. So usually, education is not the top priority for women to go and get educated. It's mostly the boys who are sent into schools and who are mostly sent to schools to get education, and women tend to stay back and indulge in not indulge, I mean they're forced to go do house labor and household chores and draw water, etc., etc. So it limits their educational opportunities.
Thank you, Bhumika. Haley?
You all of you guys really summed it up well, but one thing that I could notice from all of your points and from what I sort of thought from the question was it all basically boils down to mindset of the society, like be it safety concerns or be it household pressure. I think the root cause of it is the prejudices that people have when it comes to caste, especially Dalits. I think that is the major factor that prevents them from accessing quality education and which we as a society should try combating.
Thank you, Haley. I know a lot of you spoke about safety concerns. I think it's also important to highlight how prevalent harassment and sexual abuse is when it comes to educational institutions and Dalit girls and women going to attend these institutions. I think fear of this violence can deter a lot of girls from attending school or force them to drop out either because of their own circumstances or because fear instilled in them by their families, depriving them of the right of education, which is very unfortunate. Moving on to the next segment of our discussion, are there any successful initiatives or programs aimed at improving access to education for Dalit girls and women? If so, what are the key factors contributing to their success? Yes, Bhumika.
I think there's this scheme by the government where they provide residential schools and hostels for Dalit students. So this program, it provides like we were just talking about how their infrastructural lack in women and girls accessing education. There's no proper roads or there's safety concerns. So I think a residential school and hostel is like the best solution to this. So these programs, they basically provide accommodation and they provide a very like a learning environment, a holistic learning environment for girls from remote areas, because they face social exclusion or they can't access the educational system. So, the I think the name is Eklavya model, something Eklavya model of residential schools for tribal children. And if I'm not wrong, there's also a private run residential school, and the principal or the founder, he came to KBC and he actually won a substantial amount of money for this tribal school, and he kind of funded it. So these schools are one scheme which have been very successful.
Thank you so much, Bhumika. That was a very interesting point you brought up over there. Sunidhi, would you like to go next?
I couldn't really, like, when we talk about successful, I couldn't find any government schemes that are like particularly working towards women education by major national national parties or central government. But like most of the things that I could find, like most of the projects that I could find that were working towards education of Dalit women were like by NGOs and by organizations at an international level. Also, one thing that I was reading about was that there was a caste removal act. I'm not sure of the name. It was initiated, I think, pre-independence only, and it aimed at probably removing all sort of infrastructural issues that pertain to education of Dalits in the form of like school buildings and everything. So, infrastructural obstacles, like I am not sure how, till what extent it was successful. But then again, there has been, there's been little work from the side of the government unless it's like a particular party, like we know that the Samajwadi Party, who's majorly, again, it's a Dalit, it's a party that was started by a Dalit representative only. But there haven't been any successful programs, and I would also give a substantial amount of, the reason for this, like is that even when we have Dalit representation in the government, it's not like complete. And I think that's something that the Dalits have been facing in the form of representation since the start. Even if they manage to, even if they have a reservation and one of the constituencies has a what do you it has a candidate from the Dalit community that stands up and even comes into power from that area. You cannot sort of ignore the fact that there are Dalits living as minorities in various other areas, and that in the central government or in the parliament itself, that candidate is still a single person or a minority. So even like as a whole, as a majority, they're never able to, claim a like are never able to win. And then when they enter coalition, there are like a lot of sort of conditions to them being given the power of that sort, which is, I think, this is like the downside of democracy itself, the system. But that is why I don't think so. There have been a lot of successful campaigns around access to education to women. It always gets overpowered by the larger goal that, women itself need education. It's never about, a Dalit woman or a woman from an OBC category or something like that. It always boils down to the fact that, women are only underrepresented in our country, so, you have to work first on that. If you're still standing on the fact that there's reservation for women in seats for women in parliament, I think boiling it down to Dalits and getting that intersectionality politically is a little more far-fetched as of now. So, yeah.
Thank you, Sunili. Haley, Anushka, would you like to add something to that?
Even though I'm so sorry, I can go.
Oh no, it's go on. It's okay.
So even though I couldn't find any such government schemes that are specifically or explicitly targeted towards Dalit women, there are many schemes like scholarships, basically government scholarships, which aim to increase participation of marginalized community into educational centers or schools. So there is like Dr. Ambedkar National Merit Scholarship and a National Overseas Scholarship, which basically focuses on people who are coming from low income families and are also a part of a marginalized community, including the scheduled castes or these scheduled tribes. So there is no scheme that targets specifically towards Dalit women. It's just as a marginalized group, they are getting some educational benefits, but not women as such.
Haley, you can go ahead.
Yeah. Even I couldn't find like initiative specifically for Dalit women, but I did find one initiative for like marginalized community that really stood out was similar to what Bhumika found. It is called as Kasturba Gandhi Balika Vidyalayas, where they give quality education to girls aged 10 to 18. And they have one residential school for classes 6 to 12 in every educationally backward block of society. So while the implementation of this, when I was reading, it seemed to be quite pretty fair. But there is a lot that in its report that they sent to Niti Aayog, they mentioned that there was a lot of resistance faced by parents of such girls, especially in rural areas where there was unawareness of such programs by government. So I think this is something that that the government and society really needs to tackle about spreading awareness of these schemes so that people can actually avail of those benefits in the first place.
Thank you, Haley. I think adding to what all of you spoke about, I think one of the most successful government initiatives have been, affirmative action policies. Even though they're not specifically for Dalit women, just Dalits in general. I think they've played a very significant role in increasing representation in education institutions in particular, and helping marginalized communities get the representation they deserve. Would any of you like to add anything to that, or to any portion of the discussion we had today? Okay, I think I'd just like to sum up then by saying that we live in a world where I think social status and gender dictate the opportunities we get, and hearing stories of Dalit women serve in powerful positions are, reminders of the transformative potential of education in challenging entrenched inequalities. By recognizing the importance of education as a beacon for Dalit women's liberation, we reaffirm our shared responsibility to dismantle these barriers and promote inclusivity, where every individual has the right to thrive and fulfill their potential. Thank you so much for participating in this edition of the Roundtable organized by the Gender and Society Cluster.